History is often presented as a collection of dates, names, and events that feel firmly settled. We are taught that the past has already been written, examined, and understood. But the deeper we look, the more we realize that history is filled with unanswered questions, moments where facts fade, records disappear, and certainty quietly breaks down. Welcome to today's story. Across centuries, countless events have taken place under circumstances that remain unclear, even after years of research and debate. Official records may exist, but they are often incomplete, contradictory, or shaped by the perspectives of those who wrote them. In many cases, what truly happened was never fully captured or perhaps was never meant to be. Some mysteries begin with a simple question that history cannot answer. Why did an event unfold the way it did? How could something so significant leave behind so little reliable evidence? And why, despite modern technology and academic effort, do these gaps still remain? Historians continue to analyze documents, artifacts, and eyewitness accounts, hoping to uncover the missing pieces. Yet time itself works against them. Memories fade, physical evidence erodes, and crucial details are lost to wars, disasters, or deliberate secrecy. What remains is a fragile outline of events, open to interpretation and debate. These unresolved moments remind us that history is not a finished book. It is a living puzzle, shaped by human decisions, limitations, and silence. For every event we believe we understand, there may be another truth hidden just beyond our reach. Today, we begin exploring one of those lingering questions, a historical mystery that has resisted explanation and continues to challenge everything we think we know about the past. Throughout history, there have been individuals whose lives simply stopped leaving clear traces behind. They were not unknown people lost to obscurity, but figures with documented identities, responsibilities, and social presence. Their sudden disappearances created gaps that records, rumors, and investigations have never fully closed. In some cases, these individuals were last seen following ordinary routines, traveling familiar roads, attending planned meetings, or returning home at expected hours. There were no clear signs of danger, no immediate witnesses, and no reliable accounts explaining what happened next. Personal belongings might have been left behind, correspondence ended abruptly, and official searches produced more questions than answers. Historical documents often provide fragments rather than clarity. Reports written long after the events may rely on second-hand testimony, political interests, or assumptions shaped by the era. Conflicting timelines and missing paperwork further complicate efforts to reconstruct what truly occurred. Over time, speculation begins to replace evidence, and theories multiply without resolution. The disappearance of influential figures also raises uncomfortable questions about power and control. Some vanishings occurred during periods of political tension, social unrest, or secret negotiations. This has led historians to consider whether certain truths were intentionally concealed, or whether records were altered or destroyed to protect reputations, institutions, or stability. Despite modern analysis and renewed academic interest, many of these cases remain frozen in uncertainty. Without physical evidence or reliable first-hand accounts, conclusions remain out of reach. What survives are shadows of lives once fully lived, now reduced to unanswered questions. These disappearances remind us that history is not only shaped by what is recorded, but also by what is lost. When a person vanishes without explanation, the silence they leave behind becomes part of the historical record itself, a reminder that even well-documented eras can hide moments that defy understanding. Throughout history, many deaths have been officially recorded, yet the circumstances surrounding them remain deeply uncertain. These are not cases where details were simply forgotten over time, but moments where evidence existed, investigations were conducted, and still no clear conclusion could be reached. In several instances, historical figures were found dead under conditions that raised immediate questions. Reports may have pointed to illness, accidents, or natural causes, but inconsistencies quickly appeared. Witness accounts conflicted, timelines failed to align, and physical evidence was either missing or poorly documented. As years passed, official explanations often became accepted more out of necessity than certainty. Medical knowledge of earlier eras also complicates these cases. Limited understanding of disease, injuries, and forensic science meant that many causes of death were determined through observation rather than proof. What might now be easily explained with modern tools remained mysterious at the time, allowing doubt to linger across generations. Political and social pressure further blurred the truth. Some deaths occurred during periods of instability, where assigning responsibility could provoke unrest or expose powerful interests. In such cases, investigations may have been rushed, restricted, or quietly abandoned. Records were sometimes simplified, altered, or left incomplete to preserve public order or protect reputations. Today, historians revisit these deaths using updated methods and fresh perspectives. Letters, financial records, and newly discovered documents can shed light on long-forgotten details. Yet even with modern analysis, definitive answers often remain elusive. Too much time has passed, and too much evidence has been lost. These unresolved deaths occupy a unique place in history. They remind us that certainty is not guaranteed, even when events are carefully recorded. Some endings remain unclear, leaving behind questions that history continues to circle without ever fully closing the case. History is filled with discoveries that appear strangely out of place, challenging what we believe people of the past were capable of achieving. These findings often suggest levels of knowledge, engineering, or craftsmanship that do not easily align with the technological limits of their era. Archaeologists have uncovered structures built with remarkable precision, using methods that are still debated today. Massive stones were shaped, transported, and assembled without clear evidence of the tools or techniques required to do so. In some cases, the margins of error are so small that even modern equipment would struggle to replicate the results with the same accuracy. Beyond architecture, certain artifacts hint at advanced understanding of mathematics, astronomy, or materials. Calendars aligned with celestial movements, maps showing unexpected geographic accuracy, and objects made from complex alloys all raise difficult questions. How was this knowledge acquired, and why does it seem to appear suddenly, without a clear developmental path? Written records rarely provide satisfying answers. Many texts have been lost, damaged, or translated multiple times, leaving room for misinterpretation. Others may never have existed in written form at all, relying instead on oral traditions that vanished over time. As a result, historians are left trying to connect isolated pieces without a complete framework. Skeptics often argue that these discoveries are misunderstood or exaggerated. Yet even cautious explanations struggle to account for every detail. When multiple findings from different regions display similar unexplained sophistication, coincidence becomes harder to accept. These discoveries force us to reconsider the linear view of progress. Knowledge may not always move forward in a straight line. Some achievements of the past remain unexplained not because they are impossible, but because the context that made them possible has disappeared, leaving behind evidence that still resists full understanding. Across the world, entire civilizations once thrived with complex societies, established trade networks, and distinctive cultures only to vanish, leaving behind ruins and unanswered questions. These were not small or isolated communities, but organized populations that sustained themselves for generations before abruptly declining or disappearing. Archaeological evidence often shows signs of daily life frozen in time. Homes were abandoned with tools still in place, cities left without clear evidence of invasion or catastrophe. In many cases, there are no mass graves, no records of large-scale conflict, and no definitive clues explaining why people left or what happened to them afterward. Scholars have proposed various explanations, including environmental changes, resource depletion, disease, or internal conflict. While each theory offers partial insight, none fully accounts for all the evidence. Some regions show signs of long-term drought, while others appear environmentally stable at the time of collapse. Trade routes may have weakened, yet that alone does not explain total abandonment. The lack of written records deepens the mystery. Many of these civilizations relied on oral traditions or writing systems that have not been fully decoded. Without first-hand accounts, historians must rely on material remains, which can suggest patterns but rarely tell complete stories. Important details about leadership, belief systems, or social tensions may have vanished along with the people themselves. Modern technology has improved our ability to analyze soil, climate data, and settlement patterns, offering new perspectives on old questions. Still, these tools often raise further uncertainties instead of providing closure. Each new discovery seems to add another layer rather than a final answer. The disappearance of entire civilizations challenges the assumption that societal collapse always follows clear and visible causes. Sometimes, history offers only silence, a reminder that even advanced societies can fade away, leaving behind questions that time refuses to resolve. Throughout history, written language has been humanity's way of preserving knowledge, belief, and identity. Yet not all texts have surrendered their meaning. Across different cultures and eras, inscriptions, manuscripts, and symbols have survived without revealing the messages they were meant to convey. Some of these writings are carved into stone or etched onto metal, suggesting they held lasting importance. Others appear in fragile manuscripts, carefully produced but never clearly understood. Despite decades of study, scholars have been unable to fully decode their structure, vocabulary, or purpose. Without a known reference language or bilingual text, interpretation becomes a slow and uncertain process. In certain cases, the symbols appear consistent and organized, implying a functional system rather than random decoration. Patterns repeat, spacing follows rules, and layouts suggest intentional design. Yet attempts to link them to known languages or scripts have repeatedly failed. Each proposed translation opens new contradictions instead of clarity. The loss of cultural context plays a major role in this uncertainty. Languages do not exist in isolation. They depend on shared knowledge, traditions, and social practices. When a civilization declines or disappears, its language can vanish with it. What remains are marks on a surface, separated from the voices that once gave them meaning. Technology has introduced new methods of analysis, including digital imaging and pattern recognition. These tools can identify structures and frequencies within texts, but understanding meaning requires more than patterns alone. Without cultural anchors, interpretation remains limited. These undeciphered texts stand as quiet reminders of how much human knowledge has been lost. They suggest that entire systems of thought, history, and belief may still exist in silence, waiting for a key that has not yet been found or that may no longer exist at all. History records many disasters that unfolded suddenly, causing widespread damage and lasting confusion. While some events have clear causes, others remain deeply contested, with no single explanation accepted by scholars. These moments sit at the intersection of natural forces, human decisions, and incomplete evidence. Contemporary accounts of such disasters are often fragmented. Witnesses describe what they saw or heard, but fear, chaos, and limited understanding can distort perception. Official reports may attempt to assign responsibility or provide reassurance, yet they are sometimes produced under pressure and based on limited information. As a result, early conclusions can shape the narrative without fully explaining the event. Physical evidence rarely survives intact. Structures collapse, landscapes change, and materials degrade over time. When historians examine these sites years or centuries later, they are left interpreting traces rather than direct proof. Environmental data may suggest possible causes, but rarely offers a complete picture. Human factors further complicate interpretation. Decisions made in moments of urgency, failures in communication, or misjudgments of risk can turn manageable situations into disasters. Yet records of these choices are often incomplete or deliberately vague, making it difficult to separate accident from oversight. Debate continues as new evidence emerges and old assumptions are challenged. Advances in science allow researchers to simulate scenarios and reassess historical conditions. but conclusions still depend on interpretation. Different disciplines may support competing explanations, each plausible but incomplete. These unresolved disasters remind us that history does not always provide closure. Some events resist clear categorization, leaving behind questions rather than lessons. They remain reminders of uncertainty, moments where the line between nature, chance, and human error becomes impossible to define with confidence. Eyewitness testimony has long been considered a valuable source in understanding historical events. Yet in many cases, accounts from those who were present only deepen the mystery. Instead of forming a clear narrative, these testimonies often contradict one another, leaving historians struggling to determine what truly occurred. People experience the same event in different ways. Factors such as position, timing, emotion, and personal bias can shape how moments are perceived and remembered. In periods of chaos or tension, these differences become even more pronounced. What one witness describes as a defining moment may be entirely absent from another's account. Historical records frequently preserve multiple versions of the same event, written by observers with differing motives or loyalties. Some accounts were recorded years later, relying on memory rather than direct notes. Others may have been influenced by political pressure, social expectations, or the desire to protect reputations. Over time, these narratives hardened into competing interpretations rather than verifiable facts. The challenge for historians lies in determining which details can be trusted. When official documents conflict with personal diaries, letters, or oral testimony, certainty becomes difficult. Even when multiple witnesses agree on certain elements, key moments often remain disputed, leaving critical questions unresolved. Modern psychology has further complicated these cases by revealing how unreliable memory can be. Studies show that recollections can change over time, influenced by repetition, suggestion, or later information. This raises the possibility that some historical testimonies were altered long before they were ever written down. Conflicting eyewitness accounts remind us that history is shaped not only by events, but by human perception. When truth depends on memory, certainty becomes fragile. In these moments, the past remains divided into versions that cannot be fully reconciled, leaving history suspended between what was seen and what can never be proven. Behind many major historical events lies a network of decisions that were never fully revealed to the public. Political power is often exercised quietly, through private agreements, informal alliances, and confidential discussions that leave little trace in official records. When outcomes seem sudden or unexplained, historians are left to question what forces may have been operating behind the scenes. In periods of instability, secrecy becomes a tool of control. Governments restrict information to maintain order, protect strategic interests, or shape public perception. Documents may be classified, selectively released, or permanently withheld. As a result, the historical record reflects only what authorities allowed to be seen, not necessarily what actually occurred. Informal power structures further complicate understanding. Advisors, financiers, and influential figures without official titles can shape decisions just as strongly as elected leaders. Their influence may be hinted at through correspondence or indirect references, but rarely documented in a way that allows for clear conclusions. Over time, their roles fade into speculation rather than certainty. Political secrecy also affects how events are remembered. Narratives are simplified, responsibility is shifted, and uncomfortable details are left unspoken. When later generations attempt to re-examine these moments, they encounter gaps that cannot be easily filled. Even when documents are eventually released, they may be incomplete or heavily edited. Modern historians use cross-referenced archives, international records, and personal papers to reconstruct these hidden dynamics. Yet without full transparency, interpretation remains limited. Evidence can suggest patterns, but rarely proves intent beyond doubt. These hidden power structures remind us that history is not always shaped by visible actions alone. Sometimes, the most influential decisions occur in silence, leaving behind outcomes that can be documented, but motives that remain just out of reach. Many historical mysteries persist not because answers never existed, but because the evidence needed to reach them has been lost. Documents disappear, artifacts are destroyed, and physical traces fade with time, leaving historians to work with fragments rather than complete records. In some cases, what is missing matters more than what remains. Wars, fires, natural disasters, and neglect have erased vast portions of the historical record. Libraries have burned, archives have been looted, and entire collections of documents have vanished without copies. When this happens, events that were once clearly understood become difficult, if not impossible, to reconstruct accurately. Evidence is sometimes lost through human choice rather than accident. Records may be intentionally destroyed to protect reputations, avoid responsibility, or prevent political fallout. Decisions made behind closed doors can leave no official trace, especially when those involved had the power to control what was preserved and what was removed. Over time, these absences become permanent gaps in history. Even physical evidence is not immune to disappearance. Artifacts can be misplaced, damaged, or misidentified. Early excavations often lacked proper documentation, meaning crucial context was never recorded. Once removed from their original setting, objects can lose much of their historical value, raising more questions than answers. Later generations may attempt to fill these gaps with inference and comparison. Letters, financial records, or secondary references can offer clues, but rarely provide certainty. Each missing piece forces historians to rely on probability rather than proof, increasing the space for debate and disagreement. Lost evidence reminds us that history depends not only on what happened, but on what survived. When key materials vanish, truth becomes harder to define. What remains is an outline shaped by absence, a reminder that some answers were not just forgotten, but physically erased from the path to understanding. Advances in technology have transformed the way historians examine the past. Tools such as digital imaging, data modeling, and scientific analysis allow researchers to revisit old evidence with fresh precision. Documents once considered unreadable can now be enhanced, damaged sites reconstructed, and patterns detected across vast amounts of data. These methods have clarified many historical questions, correcting earlier assumptions and uncovering overlooked details. Dates can be refined, materials analyzed, and movements traced with far greater accuracy than before. In some cases, technology has confirmed long-debated theories or eliminated explanations that lacked evidence. Yet for many historical mysteries, even the most advanced tools reach a limit. Technology can analyze what exists, but it cannot recreate evidence that has been completely lost. When documents are missing, witnesses gone, or physical traces erased, no amount of computation can fully restore what is no longer there. The absence remains. Interpretation also plays a crucial role. Data does not speak for itself. It must be understood within context. Different researchers can examine the same information and reach different conclusions, influenced by assumptions, methodology, or perspective. Technology reduces uncertainty, but it does not eliminate debate. There is also the risk of overconfidence. Modern tools can create an illusion of certainty, leading to conclusions that appear definitive but rest on incomplete foundations. Historians must balance innovation with caution, recognizing that new methods are aids, not final authorities. The persistence of unanswered questions reminds us that progress does not guarantee closure. Even in an age of powerful technology, some mysteries remain resistant to explanation. They stand as reminders that history is shaped by both knowledge and absence, and that some truths may remain beyond reach, no matter how advanced our tools become. Unsolved historical mysteries endure not simply because they lack answers, but because they challenge our understanding of the past. They sit at the edges of what can be known, reminding us that history is shaped as much by uncertainty as by fact. These unresolved questions force historians to confront the limits of evidence, interpretation, and memory. When a mystery remains open, it invites ongoing inquiry. Each generation brings new perspectives, shaped by different values, methods, and concerns. What once seemed insignificant may gain new importance, while accepted explanations can be questioned or reinterpreted. In this way, unresolved mysteries keep history active rather than settled. These cases also reveal the human element behind historical records. Decisions about what to preserve, what to destroy, and what to emphasize were made by people with specific motives and limitations. By examining what is missing or unclear, we gain insight into power structures, social norms, and the realities of the time even without definitive answers. Unsolved mysteries encourage critical thinking. They remind audiences not to accept simplified narratives without question and to recognize that certainty in history is often provisional. Doubt becomes a tool rather than a weakness, pushing inquiry forward instead of closing it prematurely. Beyond academia, these mysteries resonate because they reflect universal themes: loss, curiosity, and the search for meaning. They connect the present to the past through shared uncertainty. Even centuries later, unanswered questions can provoke reflection and debate, keeping historical moments alive in public memory. Ultimately, the value of unsolved mysteries lies not only in the possibility of discovery, but in the process of questioning itself. They remind us that history is not a finished story with clear endings, but an ongoing conversation, one shaped by what we know, what we suspect, and what remains forever just out of reach. As we reach the end of today's journey, one thing becomes clear: history is not just a record of answers, but a collection of enduring questions. The mysteries we have explored are not failures of knowledge, but reflections of time, loss, and human limitation. They remind us that even the most studied eras can still hold uncertainty beneath the surface. These unresolved stories continue to matter because they keep curiosity alive. They encourage us to look closer, think critically, and accept that not everything from the past can be neatly explained. In a world that often demands certainty, historical mysteries offer space for reflection rather than conclusion. Each unanswered question is a reminder that history was lived by real people, in real moments, shaped by decisions, silence, and chance. Some truths were never recorded, others were lost along the way, and some may still be waiting to be rediscovered. Thank you for taking this journey through the unknown. If you found today's story thought-provoking, feel free to stay curious, keep questioning, and continue exploring the past with an open mind. Until next time, thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next story.